Welcome to the Open to Hope Show. I'm your host, Dr. Gloria Horsley, with my daughter and co-host,
Dr. Heidi Horsley.
Well, Heidi, we've got a really important show today because we're going to talk about being a widower and living in a single world. Because we know a lot of our audience out there have had a loss of a spouse, including me recently, and they're wondering how we're going to get through, right, Heidi?
Yes, absolutely. And we've got 3 people here that are walking this walk and talking this talk, and they're going to help us navigate these waters and maybe give you some advice as well.
Absolutely. I went to Camp Widow in San Diego this year, and one of my favorite people is joining us today, Neff Hernandez. She is fabulous, and Heidi's going to tell you all about her right now.
Yeah. So we have 3 guests today, Neff Hernandez, Alex Rivera, and Rick Melott. And I will start by introducing Michelle. We've known Michelle for many years. She's fabulous and is doing incredible work. She is the founder and chief executive officer of Soaring Spirits International, a nonprofit organization providing peer support and programming for widowed people worldwide. Michelle started Soaring Spirits after she lost her husband, Philip, in a tragic bike accident. This community of support reaches millions today. Michelle is the author of the book Different After You, Rediscovering Yourself After Grief or Trauma, which is coming out, I think, in about 6 months, right, Michelle?
2 months.
2 months. It's coming out in 2 months. Michelle has received numerous awards, including a letter of recognition from President Joe Biden, the 2021 CNN Hero Award, which she is being given this weekend, which is pretty amazing here in New York City, Simi Valley Hospital Foundation's Woman of the Year Award, Ventura County Women's Today Award, and many, many others. So welcome to the show, Michelle.
Thank you. It's so good to be here. We've been waiting for this for a long time.
Yeah, we've been trying to get you here. It's really fabulous to have you on.
Yes, and joining Michelle today is Alex Rivera. Alex was born and raised in New York City. He was married to his beloved wife, Evilise, who he called Evie, for 28 years, and she died in 2015. He is currently dating a widow, Isabel, and the key to their success is that they can truly relate to each other. He is much better than he was for the first 2 years after losing his wife. Soaring Spirits is among the key reasons why he is marching strong with hope in his heart.
Welcome to the show, Alex.
Thank you so much.
Welcome.
And happy holidays and Merry Christmas to everybody.
It's great to have you on.
And with Alex joining virtually as well is Rick Melott. Rick was married to his wife Connie for over 35 years. They had different personalities. She was a free spirit, while he was more traditional in his thinking. This didn't matter though, because they meshed perfectly, and they were soulmates. He was at her bedside when she passed away in June of 2020, and his whole world came crashing down. Rick is thankful that he found Soaring Spirits, as they have provided a support network that probably saved his life. He is eternally grateful to Michelle and the Soaring Spirits team. Welcome to the show, Rick.
Thank you for having me. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to everybody this year, too.
So great to have you on today, Rick. You know, it's really interesting when you both talk about how important Soaring Spirits has been to you, because Heidi and I know that the 2 major things that we're finding that are important in dealing with a loss are peer support and information. And Michelle, you do a great job of both.
Oh, I appreciate that. We love what we do, and I agree. A supportive community is a key part of any experience, really, but of grief particularly. And when you can find other people who are living the same type of experience you are, I think it's why it's so important to have a widowed community specifically. It can be a nice thing that sits next to everything else that you may do, but having a widowed community for someone who's lost a spouse or partner, I think is critical to healing.
Yeah. You know, one of the things that I've really been impressed and struck by, and I'm glad you guys came on, that you have gone and reached out to an organization, because we see a lot of men tend to not do that. They tend not to look out for that peer support. And we haven't found that the world is, over time, is very supportive of men's grief.
I agree.
You know, did you guys find that? How about you, Rick? Did you find that you got support right away as a man? Why did you reach out, and how?
Well, I'm not a lot of support because all our family lives back in California. We live in Oklahoma. And I didn't really have any. I started grief group therapy about 2 weeks after Connie passed away because I realized quickly I was on a pretty bad downward spiral. So I started that up, and then about a month afterwards, I was just Googling late night one night, found Soaring Spirits, and sent away for the information and thought, well, this sounds good. And I mean, they've been my support for the last year and a half. It's, like I said, I don't have any really in-person people here to do that. So I'm very thankful for that.
What kinds of things do you get? It's just been a year and a half for you, I know, and it's early, and it's about that long for me. What has peer support meant to you in getting in touch as a guy?
Early on, when they started the newly widowed calls, it was about a month after Connie passed away, and to be on there, and at that time, I think it was about 20 people on the call, and there was maybe 3 or 4 guys, 5 guys at the most. So just to see other guys, at least I knew I wasn't alone, and to hear them kind of say and go through the same things, and whether you're just breaking down crying or just don't know what to do because your partner's gone, and from making decisions to just what do I feed myself. It was just good to see that in other men, because you don't see that out there in the world, really. I don't.
Yeah, that's amazing. I wanted to ask you, Alex, it's been a bit longer for you, 6 years around?
Yes.
And I wondered, when you hear Rick speak, do you identify with that, what he's saying, and how did you get started reaching out?
Yeah, just to clarify, I benefited from many of the services from Soaring Spirits. If you look at it like a pie, there are many slices. There's the Camp Widow recaps, the keynote speeches on video. What was the Widow's Voice? The newsletter was extremely helpful. And then all these video clips and posts from fellow widows and widowers. So that's like 9 other slices of the pie, but I never specifically went to Camp Widow. But to answer your initial question, yes, it was harder to bond with a widower. I never had the benefit Rick had of seeing other widowers at Camp Widow, but there's informal groups on Facebook where people start a widow group. I have one, and I found that the widows, like 25 of them, were so supportive to me in the beginning. And when I reached out to widowers, the chat kind of ended after 2 days. I just found that there was I don't know. It was harder for 2 guys to cry together, to bond together, I don't know. I'm Hispanic. I don't know if it was a macho thing, but the women were so great listeners, very compassionate, and that's my advice. If somebody out there is a widower, don't hesitate to speak to another widower, but keep an open mind. Some widows have some great personalities, and they really listen, and I don't know. They provided a lot of help to me.
Yeah, Michelle, I wondered what your take is on it.
Well, I'm so glad you brought that up, Alex, because my experience has been, and over the many years of working with widowed people, that, when you think about it from a man's perspective, the person he typically would have processed his feelings with is a female, right? Is his wife. And so now he finds himself like, okay, am I supposed to process with men, or am I supposed to try to find and also the challenge of not wanting to appear that you want to be in a relationship. What you really want is peer support. And so I think that one of the most powerful things about Camp Widow specifically is the opportunity to be in person with other men and realize how normal that is, how normal your feelings are. And to both Alex and Rick's points, right? Rick got an opportunity mostly due to COVID, because we went virtual with all of our programming. and developed some new programs as a result of not being able to serve in person, but knowing that our community was going to need us more than ever. The need didn't go down, the need went up, and the way that we usually delivered our programs completely changed. But what that left us with was this beautiful newly widowed program where Rick can see people online. By the time Alex comes to us, he's not in the same place as Rick. He doesn't need the newly widowed connections, but still was able to benefit from all of the other virtual programs that provide the connections. I think the overwhelming need is to speak to someone else who understands what it's like to be living their life without the person that they plan to spend the rest of their life with. No matter when it was that they died, they still thought that they had more time, and so they're now trying to make a life for themselves, and being able to do that in community, whether it's men, women, somebody who has experienced the death of a spouse or partner, I think is what the critical piece is. But I have witnessed in our widower group the really intense bonding that happens when they do have a chance to be in person, when you do get to be with other guys, because typically it just doesn't happen that way in our world. We don't often have those kind of really powerful emotional connections until we have something huge like this happen, and then it's like, okay, where do I go?
Right.
And I like how the widow and widowers can come together, or they can be separate. And like you said, there's something also powerful, not only virtually, but coming together.
Yeah.
And some of the best conversations that people have, and I think men as well, especially, is shoulder to shoulder.
Yeah.
And doing things. And I know that you provide a lot of opportunities for doing and being active as people are discussing and talking about being alone.
Yeah, for sure.
So I wanted to ask you, well, maybe I should ask Alex first. How has it changed for you over time? Are you volunteering with Soaring Spirits? Are you doing anything special, any reaching out, or what are you doing in connection with that?
A couple of things. First, the first thing, and I failed to mention, is one of the benefits and services of Soaring Spirits. During the worst pandemic in our country's history, Michelle held 2 fireside chats per week, and that really helped me a lot. Tuesday and Thursday, I was looking forward to that. Fortunately, it was recorded and I could listen to it after work, and I turned a lot of my friends onto it, and that's basically an answer to your initial question. The great things that I see in Soaring Spirit, their website, I immediately share with widow community. Again, I have an informal group, and I share with them, and I get a lot of likes, and I'm sure it improves viewership for the Soaring Spirits site in general, and Michelle's personal account on Facebook in particular. So that was I don't know. I just want to emphasize how helpful that was.
So that's interesting. What's striking me, Heidi, is that the men are coming on virtually. Because I know one of the things is always, there are always women at these conferences, other conferences we go to, grief conferences, it'll be major, a lot of women. But the men, you're talking about going to work and then coming on the internet, and it's been 6 years for you. So that is really fascinating. What's your thought about it, Heidi?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's one of the powerful things about what Michelle is doing.
Yeah, and maybe one of the things that we're looking at now is maybe the way men want to interact is over the internet. I don't, with the web kind of thing. What's your thought about that, Alex?
Yeah, I mean, the key word is virtual. A lot of the services with the pandemic, Soaring Spirits made a seamless transition. I mean, all credit, a shout out to Michelle. So many things.
Yeah, let me ask Rick, what are you using as far as Soaring Spirits? And do you agree that online is a thing? You went to the conference, and I was at the same conference you were at. Fantastic, a huge number of workshops, and Michelle can tell us later about all the things she offers, the workshops and things. But what are you using online now?
I'm not really, I still go in there and read some of the Widows Voices blogs every now and then. I don't go on there a lot of the resources as much as I did the first 6 months, 12 months. I still will go on some of the weekly calls, Zoom calls, just to kind of connect. I mean, even if it's gotten a little large, but I can just connect to people. As if I was more impressed with coming to Camp Widow in person, Being in the men's panel, the men's workshop was kind of nice to be in a room of about 20 guys and just hearing them, all their stories and the same concerns and the same, I don't say problems, but same issues. And as for the virtual, I mean, I think it is probably for the guy maybe feels safer. And I know you mentioned, was it Michelle, you mentioned something about we're used to talking to our wives. And I mean, I found early on, and even to this day, I still tend to connect with the women more in those groups than I do than the guys sometimes. It's just, I don't know, it's just what I do, how my personality, I guess. And it was great to meet all those people in person.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I was thinking, Rick. I mean, here you are forming all these, connections, you and Alex, online virtually, and then going and being able to meet people that you've met virtually must be pretty rewarding also.
Oh, it was. I mean, to see all people from the last year and a half from the virtual calls, to see Michelle in person, I mean, Jenny and Mary, I mean, just everybody on the Soaring Spirits team, it was, I just can't say enough about it. It was just fantastic. And I'm already planning to go to Tampa.
When's the next one you're going to?
March.
Okay.
I'm glad to hear that, Rick. We'll look forward to it.
March in Tampa, Florida.
Yeah.
Love it.
All right, fantastic. So Michelle, what do you think? Do you think that there's going to be a whole new opening for men coming in through the internet? Or do you have any thoughts?
I feel like we're going to continue doing what we're doing, which is offering that blend. Because in part it's personality, in part it's, what works for you timing and schedule-wise, in part it's if they're able to travel, to go to in-person events. So we'll always continue to offer both virtual and in-person programming, and you'll see, I think, an increase in both. Our regional social groups is another thing that we offer, which depends on where you live in the world, but we have 70 groups right now operating throughout all of North America, and we have one in Ireland. And so we give people an opportunity then weekly to meet in person. So to Rick's point, he doesn't have really, and Alex both said, they don't really have anyone who's in their areas. And so as that program continues to build, we'll have more and more of those groups. So Rick might have the opportunity, and Alex could have the opportunity to go to a group in person, go out to dinner on a Monday night. They're not designed to be support groups in the typical sense of a support group. Instead, it's helping people rebuild their social structure. And so then you have people to go to dinner with, you have people to go to a movie with.
And somebody to shoot some baskets with.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or play some video games with.
And because we've been because we've been doing so much virtual, that sounds still a little bit like, ooh, are we going to be able to do that? But as we continue moving forward, we will offer both of those, because then you can meet those people virtually, feel connected, and that often draws people to an in-person event because they really want to meet those people.
And also, you're not going there not knowing anybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
You've already formed a community.
A little community of your own, yeah. And that's really the work of Soaring Spirits. We want people to build community within the community, find their people, and those are the people who are going to walk forward with them, not just through their grief, but into the next life that they build for themselves.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I want to... Oh, go ahead.
To that point of having the virtual stuff, it did make going to camp easier, I think. I mean, it was still kind of an anxious time, but it made going to camp easier because I knew people already. And if I hadn't talked to all these people in the last year and a half and just showed up cold, I think I might have been a little bit more anxious.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk about, for lack of a better word, we'll call them triggers a little bit, because I think that one of the reasons Open to Hope we're there is when people, maybe they've gone 6 years down the road or whatever, and a holiday comes or whatever, they're thrown back. And that's one thing I like about the internet and Soaring Spirits. When you have those triggers and times happen, you have some place that you can go and rely on. And I wondered, are there certain times that are bothersome to you guys and that you've had problems with?
I'll answer it first. Yeah, I wanted to say this in the beginning. The first 2 years after Evie died, I was a total mess. I didn't make any big decision for 2 years. I had no goals. I wouldn't advocate for myself. I was just I went with the flow. Dating was not ideal, but that'll take up another podcast of 2 hours. But, that could be a mini series. But then I was thrust into the world of the unknown, and what Soaring Spirits did, it just gave me a lot of confidence. It taught me to celebrate Evie's life, not mourn it. And to answer your question now directly, Christmas is no longer melancholy. I celebrate her, and it's countless videos, and keynote speeches, all culminated to, I'm not the same person I was 6 years ago. So I'm really grateful to Soaring Spirits.
I'm sorry, Rick. Have you had any triggers coming up for you?
It's weird. This year, I think the second year has been it's harder in a different way, because the first year I was just so numb and raw and everything. And this year I find, surprisingly, I'm kind of sadder more days than not. The holidays coming up, and just different things will happen, just silly little things I'll see around the house. And I think it's just more the reality is set in now.
Absolutely.
When those triggers do happen, they happen. But then they're not as many, but they are a little more intense when they do come, and then I'm okay for a little bit longer. So it's that whole thing of, the roller coaster and those kind of descriptions of it. If times like that, I'll either text some people in the group that I know that I've become friends with, or may go into Soaring Spirits, see if somebody's posted something specific to a holiday or a death event, things like that.
I think I'm hearing normalizing, aren't you? Heidi, you want to say something about that?
I was just going to say that. I was going to say, Rick, I'm guessing it's really helpful to be able to talk to people openly about this and have them say, yes, the second year is really hard, and reality sets in, and you think it's going to be easier, but oftentimes it's harder. I would think that would be really helpful to hear that and say, okay, I'm not alone, this is normal.
Because you start hearing the shoulds. I should be better. I should be further along. And you're not. You are, but you aren't.
Right. I always say, the first year you're frozen, and the second year you're thawing out, and you think you're getting worse, but you're really getting better, because you're kind of facing the reality of what your life's going to be like, and then by the third year, this is the whole theory, you're starting to say, okay, this is it. So my husband passed away about as long ago as your wife did, but I had another event, and I think you have to look at backgrounds and what's happened. My son was killed at 17 in an automobile accident, Heidi's brother. And so, and I've also been in the grief and loss world for a long time, given his loss of Scott. So I kind of knew what the plan was, but you still experience it, you still go through it. I just know it's okay. I'm not afraid. I know I'll move on beyond it, and things will be fine, and, life will go on. So I think that's one thing. I think it's scary.
And like you said, you still have to take the journey.
Yeah, you still take the trip.
Even if you know what it's going to look like, you still have to take the journey, which is, and you're in the second year.
Yeah, and I'm in the second year saying, whoa, it's pretty overwhelming. Yeah.
That unknown is starting to slap you in the face a little harder.
Yeah, yeah, exactly so.
I'm glad you brought that up, Bart, if I can pop in really quick.
Yeah.
I just wanted to normalize that further and say, when it feels like, especially for, Rick and for Gloria as well, I love that idea of being frozen and then thawing. If you think of it as a thawing, it's like, oh, this is starting to be real every day in a different way. And, as we continue to feel it, I always worry that people will say, oh gosh, it's going to get worse. Like if someone had told me the first year that it got worse than that, I would be like, okay, I don't think I could do this. But what I like to say is that it's hard in a different way, and that you have begun to build the tools that are going to help you make your way through. And so, when Rick says the activators of his grief come less frequently, but they're more intense, it's partly because you're learning how to deal with them. And you kind of know how to take care of yourself when that happens. And so it's not that it's hard, it's really hard, and it's hard in a different way. But I love that analogy of the thawing, because if you think of like, oh, okay, that's why, it helps. Yeah, it helps.
And the idea that it's hard in a different way is helpful too.
Yeah, for sure.
So before we close the show, I wanted you guys to give some advice to people who've had a loss, and what you would suggest to them to find hope. Which one of you wants to take it first?
Rick, if you want to.
I'll give it a shot. I guess like Michelle just said, if somebody would have told you the second year might be worse, because I thought that too, but then I find now, being on the other side of that, when I'm on some of those calls and I hear these 3, 4, or even less people out, I do try to tell them and say, it feels pretty bad, and it's going to always be there, but it does get better, and just don't lose hope on that. Because even in my darkest times, I know there's going to be, I hope there's going to be better times. So I do try to do that with some of the people that are shorter or not as far out as I am now. It's just kind of my way of giving back, because I've gotten so much out of it.
That's great. I wanted to just say, how's your life now?
It just is. I mean, there's nothing
Are you
big
finding
going on.
happiness, or is it?
No, I pretty much stay to myself.
I hear that you're volunteering your time and making some meaning out of your experience. Is that true, Rick?
I am helping with Soaring Spirits. I'm helping them with some of the video captioning from the Zoom calls and some other stuff. And any time they ask, I'm
That's awesome, because that's the number one first step to finding hope, is reaching out and helping others. Alex, did I get yours? Go ahead. What you'd advise to people?
Mine is, I took the first step, was to follow Soaring Spirits, and I was just determined to say yes to life. I know it's easier to say no, and I was just determined to go forward, and I had this fear that my wife would be disappointed if I lingered in a state of depression. That's what launched my ass into Soaring Spirits. I just got tired of it. And then I watched a movie called Shawshank Redemption, and Morgan Freeman says,
Yes.
get busy living or get busy dying. And it just changed me. I started signing on and listening and watching all the videos. And that's it. It's something as blunt as that.
All right, well, great. And thank you guys for both being on the show. And I wanted to have Michelle tell us about what's going on with her quickly and how people find you.
So you can find all of the programs at soaringspirits.org. That's both virtual and in person. In fact, we have so many now, we've divided them into two categories, virtual programs and in person. I also wanted to note that one of the ways that Rick got connected to us was our Newly Widowed packets. And the Newly Widowed packets are free of charge. You can find them on the Soaring Spirits website. So just look under programs, click Newly Widowed packet, and you'll get everything you need to be connected.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show, Michelle. It's been great. And Heidi, you want to give a closing?
Thank you, Michelle, for everything you're doing. And again, Michelle is a CNN Hero Award winner. If you want to watch the show on CNN, they are going to honor her on Sunday night.
Yep.
Okay, on Sunday night.
We want to thank everybody for watching this show today. And Heidi and I always want to remind you that if you've lost hope, please lean on ours until you find your own, and God bless. Guys,
Take care, everybody.
we'll say goodbye to you. Thank you guys for coming on. You were great.
Alrighty, take
You
care.
guys did a great job. Thank you.
You were
Thank you
fabulous.
so much, Michelle. Thanks, everybody.
Your ladies are awfully proud of you.
I hope so.
Absolutely.
That's for sure.